Hey there, and welcome to Miles Beyond the Page. I'm your host, writer, book nerd, and your friendly guide to all things storytelling. Each week, I sit down with amazing authors from all walks of life, whether they're just getting started, finding their readers, or living the dream with books on the shelves. We'll chat about creativity, publishing, the messy middle, and all the magic and chaos that comes with being a writer. So grab your favorite drink, get cozy, and let's dive into another episode of Miles Beyond the Page. Today, I'm super excited to welcome Mary Karlik. Hi, Mary.
Hi, thank you for
Uh,
having me.
yeah, thank you for doing it. Mary Karlik, also writing as Mary J. Wilson, combines her Texas roots with her Scottish heritage to write happily ever afters from Texas to Scotland. She earned her MFA in writing popular fiction from Seton Hill University, has a BS degree from Texas A&M University, and is currently studying Scottish Gaelic. Did I say that right?
Yes,
Awesome. All right, let's talk about. I know you have a current book that you're working on that you're shopping around. So let's talk about that. Tell me the title, what it's about, if it's a series, all that.
there's actually three that are being shopped, but the
All right.
so one of them, the one that's with the editor now, is called. We're changing the name of it. It's called A Shortbread Christmas. It's a holiday rom-com set in Scotland, and it's about a Scottish girl living in Texas who has to return home to her village to measure the world's largest shortbread cookie because or shortbread brisket. She's an adjudicator for a world record setting company. So she measures world record stuff. And I'm not doing a very good job of it, but the tagline, I think, is something along the lines of she's meant to be spending Christmas with her toes in the sand in the Caribbean, not freezing in Scotland, measuring the world's largest shortbread cookie. And worst of all, the village is the village that she was ran out of when she was 17 for accidentally setting the shortbread factory on fire.
Oh, well, this sounds like a really fun
and
book.
and of course, the hero is the owner of the shortbread factory that she went to school with, and he inherited it from his father. So she didn't really set the shortbread factory on fire, but the town accused her of it. They thought it was arson, actually, but it's not. But she has to come back now, and her goal is she left, a villain, and she's coming back a hero because they're trying to save the shortbread factory.
Right.
And through baking the world's largest shortbread, they're hoping to save the shortbread factory. Anyway, that's the story. I'm terrible at describing my stories, but that's one that's out right now that seems people are really interested in. And I have another one called A Celtic Love Song, which is set in the traditional music world of Scotland, or the Celtic music world of Scotland, about an American girl who travels to Scotland to find her dad and ends up hooking up with traveling with a Celtic band as they help her find her dad. And she falls in love with a fiddle player.
Oh,
And
that sounds
both of
fun.
those are first in a series. Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
So,
Obviously, you have Texas roots and Scottish roots now, and you helped me translate some of my dialogue into Gaelic for me for my latest book. So, can you talk a little bit about your Scottish environment and how you ended up there? Because I think it's interesting.
okay. So my mom was Scottish. Well, her family, she always told us her dad was born in Scotland, but we found out he was the first one born in the US. So I can't say that my grandfather was born Scottish anymore. But anyway, she's Scottish, and she would throw around these phrases that I always thought were Gaelic. I've since learned they're Scots, not Gaelic. But all that's to say, at a time in my life, about 10 years ago almost, I thought, well, it'd be kind of fun to learn Gaelic. I want to understand these phrases that my mom threw out. And at the time, I was also writing a fantasy, and I wanted my fairy language to be Gaelic. So I started doing, I don't know, looking up things and not having a clue what I was doing. And my editor said, if you're going to use Gaelic in your book. You better make sure it's correct. So I thought, oh, that sounds fun. And so I just found a class on Sky at Somewhat the college, and just flew out there on my own and signed up not knowing a word of Gaelic, and took the first class and just fell in love with it. So I started studying Gaelic, and then I met my husband, who's Scottish, and now we split our life between Scotland and here.
Yeah, it's
So
awesome. It's like a fairy tale, really.
it kind of is. When I told my daughter I met Keith, she's like, "Mom, you're living one of your romances," and I said, "No, I'm not, because I haven't had a black moment." So
No, and we hope you don't. So
yes, exactly.
that's well, I think it's a great story, and I love that you're learning the language, and it's such a beautiful country anyway. I'm so lucky that I got to go too. Let's talk about your writing journey now. So what inspired you initially to start writing?
I think because I always was a big daydreamer, and I always
Mm-hmm.
had these stories in my head. So I've always written in secret. And I tell this story a lot because I think it's kind of the lesson, and it's important. So I always wrote in secret, and I went to a really unique school growing up. I didn't go. I spent time in the ski valley because I was on a ski team. So we went to school part day and skied the rest of the day. So I didn't really have some of the classes that most people had. And I never learned how to keyboard. So I thought I couldn't write because I didn't know how to type. And my mother, sadly, she had cancer, and I was already out of school. I was a nurse full time, had kids, married, the whole 9 yards, and I was taking care of my mom. And she said to me, "I've never had any regrets. Live your life without regrets." And I said, "Well, Mom, I only have one regret, and that's that I've never learned how to type." So you can imagine my mom just looked at me like, "Have you lost your mind?" She said, "Why is not knowing how to type a regret?" And I said, "Because I've always wanted to be a writer, and I can't be a writer if I don't know how to type." So my mom said, "Well, if you put your fingers on the keyboard, by the time you write the end, I think you'll know how to type." And it was such a huge lesson to me because I realized I put my own roadblocks in, in front of myself. So
Mm-hmm.
after my mom passed away, I went back home, and my husband, my late husband, used to write all my papers when I was at college. And so he knew how to type. And I said, "Show me where to put my fingers." I did. And I wrote that first book, and then I never looked back. That
I
it
love
was
this
just,
story.
I just wrote book after book after book.
Yeah, that I did not know this about you, and I love this story. What a fantastic beginning. And you're right, it is a roadblock, and sometimes we do that to ourselves without knowing that's what we're doing.
Hmm.
So, I know you write in a couple of different genres. So, tell us, how did you decide on the genre that you just decided on? And or did it find you?
I think it found me because I really originally was going to write romance, what's called romancy now, fantasy romance. And my
Mhm.
first book I ever wrote was very much an epic fantasy. It was terrible and, will never be seen. And then I kind of, my kids were in high school. So I started writing young adult because I loved it because it's so angsty, and
Mhm.
and that was the first books that I got my first agent when I was writing young adult, and those were the first books that came out. And then I sold the two fantasies, and I really liked doing fantasy. But when I was really struggling to write that first fantasy because I was actually going to set it in LA because fairies are in LA and dragons. I don't know why I thought I needed to do that, but that was what I was going to do. And then I visited Scotland for the first time, and I was like, "Oh yeah, no, this is where this book needs to be, the setting." So I did, and I think that just that first time I went to Scotland, I just couldn't get enough. And
Mm.
then it was learning Gaelic and going 3 times a year, and then meeting my husband. And so it really found me because it's just great inspiration for romance.
It really is. It's a magical place. I can't wait to go back. I hope I get to go back.
I hope you do too.
Yeah. So you said your first story was an epic fantasy. What did you learn from that, writing that?
You know, your first book, I hear this all the time, is the easiest book because you don't know what you're doing. And I think with me that I think what I learned was that I could write, that
Yeah.
I really could write, that it's a lot of people say, oh, I'm going to write a novel one day, but when they sit down and you have to put 1,000 words on paper, it's a little daunting. But I
Yeah.
think I just had so much fun, so many years of built up stories in my head that
Yeah.
I think that's probably what I learned. The other thing I learned was I learned a lot about writing, the technique of writing, not just storytelling. And I remember the very first critique partner I had looked at the very first page of the book that I wrote, and I had written suddenly like 15 times on the first page. And so I learned little things like you don't say the same word over and over again. I have never used suddenly in a book since then.
Yeah, it's one of those filler words, and it's hard not to use that anyway. I
Mhm.
do the same thing. So I think we all do as we're writing. So let's talk about your writing process. Now, what does your typical writing routine look like? Are you a plotter or a pantser?
Yes and no. I know, yeah, I know my turning points, but I really start with my character. I read Lisa Cron's book about
Yeah.
unlocking the brain, and
Mm,
God, it just changed my whole world with
yeah.
writing. And so I always start with my character and I figure out what their wound is. And I write that scene of when that initial emotional wound happened
Hmm.
and why they believe they can't get what they want. And I do that for my two main characters. And once I have my character and I really know my character and I have a pretty good idea what the plot is, then I try to figure out the turning points. And lately I've been using plotting in 1 hour. Oh gosh, I can't remember the name of the author that wrote it. I'm so sorry, but I have the little template that I use. I'll send it to you. I just can't remember it. If you want to put it in the whatever
Yeah, and
the
then
chat or what, yeah.
yeah.
But I use that, and has helped me tremendously. And then I use Plotter
Mm,
also as a
yeah.
tool because it keeps me straight on what whose eye color is what and whose name is what, especially since I write in series. And then I
Yeah.
just write, and I tend to fast draft. I write as fast as I
Mm,
can do it, and I play word game. You do the same, I think.
yeah.
I play word count games with myself
Yeah.
every day. I try to beat the word count of the day before, and whatever I can do to get, because I'm terrified. The first draft terrifies me. I love to edit. So if I can just get the story down, I know I can make it better. So that's kind of my process.
I have a word count goal that I like to hit every day. And so I like seeing that climb. And I do a goal, a monthly goal, and then I just kind of break it down by every week and what do I need to hit that goal. But so that works for me. But I'm kind of a pantser mostly. I do know a little bit about my
Hmm.
characters when I start, but mostly I'm a pantser. I'm old school. I call it my story Bible, but it's all a Word document. So I've tried though, use the plotter and the Scrivener and all that. It just doesn't, my brain shuts off. It just doesn't work for
Yeah,
me.
I can't
But
use Scrivener. People are always, because I just lost, as you know, 25,000 words. And everybody
yes.
was like, if you use Scrivener, you wouldn't have lost, it's a fourth of a book. But I can't do it. I write in Word. Plotter,
Me
I don't
too.
write in Plotter. It just keeps me straight on. I do character notes and character descriptions and just notes. I usually used to write notes in a notebook, and then I would lose my notebook or, you know, leave it here when I was in Scotland or leave it in
Oh,
Scotland when I was here. It's
that's
kept me
what,
straight.
and that's why I do a Word document because I like to have it open while I'm writing because I put in descriptions and character description places. When
Mhm.
you're writing a long series, you need to know where did I put that person? What do they look like? So what helps you keep motivated when the writing gets hard?
Um, that's really a hard question. I think when I hit a really big block, it's so frustrating. And I mean, I used to have, I haven't seen a meme where a little kid's laying on their tummy spinning in a chair. Have you ever seen that meme?
Yep.
That's the way I
Yep.
feel when I hit that roadblock. It's just like you're frozen. So what I have found is usually it's because there's a lot of junk in my brain.
Mm,
So I'll just take a Word document that I know I'm not going to save, and I write everything I'm thinking from I'm irritated that my floor is sticky, or, to the person that honked at me, or, the person that said hello, to whatever. And I just empty my brain out. And I usually also at some point, it sounds so goofy, but it works for me. I'll say, and I hate my book and I hate my characters. And this is why I hate my characters and I hate this book. And she ought to just die and blah, blah, blah. And I can't figure this out. And by the time I get to that point, I start figuring it out. And then it's like, oh, okay, I can do this. And I go back to writing. And it's such a stupid thing to do, but it works for me.
I don't think that is stupid because when I get to the point in the book where I'm like, this book is terrible, it's the worst thing I've ever written, then I figure, well, I must be doing all right. I'm right on track.
Yeah, because it happens. I mean,
It
there's not a
does.
book I've written that I heard one time that Mary Jo Putney, whenever she would turn in a book to her editor, the final line was always, and then they all died.
That's funny. Well, let's talk about your publishing journey to publication. Can you tell us what your journey was when you got your first book published?
Yes. So I had a really wonderful agent. I just adored her. And she really tried to sell my Hickville High books. And it was right when self-publishing was coming out and, was making it big. And she said, I think you need to self-publish these. We got a couple of offers for contracts, but they were really restrictive, or they wanted me to take any, like I couldn't have damn or any swear words. And I'm like, well, teenagers swear, in my
Mm.
books were, anyway, it just didn't go with my book. So I turned the contracts down, and she said, I think you should self-publish. And at the same time, my mentor, when I was in graduate school, happened to be a friend of mine as well. And she was about to teach a course on how to put your books on KU or whatever. I can't even remember. I think it was Amazon KU. And she said, I will teach you how to format your book for self-publishing if you let me use you as a guinea pig for my class. And I was like, sure. So that all kind of fell into place. And then I found a cover artist that was just really wonderful. I still have those same covers. I'm going to update them this year, but those books are 10 years old and they're still making me a little bit of change.
Mm-hmm.
It's everything's dropped off lately. It seems
Sure,
like all
yeah.
book sales have dropped off, but they're still making me some money. So I did that, and I would have loved to have stayed with my agent, but she was moving to another agency and she really wasn't interested in doing fantasy, and I'd just gotten off of the fantasy contract. So we kind of parted ways, but we parted amicable, and
Yeah.
she's just lovely. And then so I did that for a while, and then life happens. Had a lot of
Mm.
tragedy happen in my life, and so there's a couple of years that I wrote books, but I didn't even submit. I was just trying to do something to keep my brain off of
Right.
horrible things that were happening in my life,
Mm-hmm.
and which really paid off, since I pulled those books out. And now one of them is my current agent is thrilled about, and I'm just finishing up my edits for that, so she's got editors that are interested, or publishers interested in it. So anyway, never throw your books away. You never know when they're going to be
Exactly.
something that somebody will want. But anyway, so I think I wrote 2 or 3 books during that time that I just didn't. And then when I tried, I thought, well, I want to go trad, because it's hard self-publishing.
It is.
And that's where I am now. I'm going down the trad lane. We'll see.
Well, that's exciting, and I hope it works out for you. So you'll definitely have
Thank
to
you.
keep me posted. What do you think are some of your biggest surprises or challenges that you face in either indie publishing or trad publishing?
With indie publishing, my biggest challenge, well, first of all, my books are the young adult contemporary books.
Hmm.
I sell mostly paperbacks. 98% of my sales are paperbacks,
Yeah.
and which is surprising, but it's because they're young adult, and young adult typically paperbacks sell better than
Right.
ebooks. And I think that's a challenge for me to get it out there. And my books have been in KU, and I'm gonna take them out and go wide, because it doesn't make sense for mine to be in KU, and I sell very few ebooks.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I was wisely told at our last DARA meeting, Shelley Bradley was talking about that, and she said,
Mm-hmm.
"Why would you have your books and all your eggs in one basket?" And that just really resonated with me. So I'm pulling all my books from KU, and I'll keep them on Amazon, but I want to
Mm-hmm.
spread them, return them. I used to have them wide, and I want to put them wide. But that, and just staying on top of all the social media and doing the
Yeah.
ads, and it's such a time suck. So that's, to me, that's the most difficult part about indie publishing. But trad publishing, the most difficult part, honestly, is finding an agent, because you have to have that gatekeeper. So
Yeah.
finding an agent that loves your writing, that you get along with. And
Mm-hmm.
when I decided to go trad, my first agent that I had, she's a great agent, well known. We just didn't click. I mean, I was so I was afraid of her, I'll be honest. But I mean, not that she was mean. It was just, I think I was so anxious to have an agent and so excited about what could happen, and
Mm-hmm.
we just did not connect. I mean, like, I was afraid to ask questions, and then when I did ask questions, I always felt like, I was, that maybe I asked the wrong question, or I don't know. It just wasn't, it was me more than her, I'm sure, but we just did not connect. And so we parted ways. And it took me another year to get another agent, but I was really picky too. And it just took me a while. But the agent I
Mm-hmm.
have now, we get along really well, and she loves my writing. And honestly, that is probably the two most important things. Well,
Yeah.
you need an agent that will fight for you, an agent that loves your writing, and an agent that you connect with.
Yeah.
And I'm with Nikki Lovick, and she hit all three of those for me. We just right away hit it off. So,
I really think that's
and
good advice too.
she's,
Yeah.
yeah.
You really
So
do need somebody.
I'm on my fourth fourth agent.
Well, that proves that you're a good solid writer then, because the agents will keep assigning you. So I think that's a great sign. And I do think that if you're going to go trad, that's really good advice for trying to find someone who can advocate for you, and you really do want somebody to love your writing. But I kind of want to talk about RWA a little bit, if you're up for that.
Okay, sure.
So I know that you are a board member, and I know that there's been a lot of changes going on. So can you talk a little bit about the organization and what you're seeing, and how things are going?
The RWA has come a long ways, and I've, RWA's given me so much, and I think anybody that writes romance in the U.S. or that's been a part of RWA, at some point RWA's given them a lot. And we
Yeah.
had a lot of issues that, I won't get into the whole
No.
big scandal and controversies, but
Right.
there were a lot of issues. I was on the original board when all that happened, and I'll stay and I'll fight for RWA because, at the time there was a lot going on. And I'm really glad I did, because I think RWA is such a different organization than it was back in
Yes.
2018. And it's much smaller, and that's kind of sad, but I think also it's much stronger. And I'm really proud of where it's, where it is. It's
Hmm.
come like the phoenix coming, reborn out of the ashes. We have a really strong board, we have a diverse board, and our board works together. And I used to hear horror stories about how much strife there was among board members, and we just don't have that. We're, ever since I've been on the board, we've always agreed that we will work together to make it a stronger organization.
Yeah.
So, and the changes that have happened, there have been some tough changes, especially with the filing, basically Chapter 11, but it's something else for nonprofit 509 something, I think.
Hmm.
But so we're financially, RWA is much stronger than it was, but we've
Hmm.
had to make some tough decisions, and that's always, people always wonder about that. And there are certain things that, we're not allowed to talk about legally because of, it happened in executive session or whatever. But I'm really pleased with where it's going, and you can ask me any question. If I can answer it, I will. Some of them I may not be able to answer,
Well,
but that's kind of where I am.
I rejoined because I really missed that feeling of community. with other writers. It's a very lonely thing sitting here behind a desk all
Mm-hmm.
day trying to write. So I really love the direction that it's going. I just wanted to let people know that it's still around. We're still strong and we're building up. And I don't think I would be published without RWBA. I just really feel like it's a great organization now and it's really coming around. So anyone who's interested in joining, I'll drop the RWA link in the description of the podcast too. So
Oh, can I talk about something that we're doing real quick?
sure, yes,
So
absolutely.
RWA is in August, is Read a Romance Month. And when you said that, this is what reminded me of it. So we're doing having Ask an Author Almost Anything, and it's open to anybody, so even non-members. And so that'll be happening in August. I know it's a little early to think about it, but I'm super excited about it because we already have 12 authors lined up to do it. I think and we're going to do it 2 times a week, 3 times a week for 12 for the month of August. So anyway, that's something to look forward to.
That's awesome. That's exciting. Yeah, can't wait for that. That'll be good. So, shifting gears a little bit, let's talk about, I know marketing is always kind of a sticky subject because it's so hard, but do you have any strategies that you found that is most effective for reaching new readers or finding new readers?
I really wish I did. I am marketing is I am really good at doing Amazon ads, and I've done some Facebook ads, but I'm just so lazy with marketing. I wish I did have really good advice. I think really, even if you hire someone to do your marketing for you, you need to know your marketing,
Yeah.
because I've been through that where I've hired people on and off throughout the last 10 years, and sometimes I look at what they do and I'm like, no, I can do much better than that. But I think you just got to learn your craft. You have to learn marketing. You have to be willing to set aside time to do it. I do Amazon ads. I'll have a day where I'll just make a whole flurry of Amazon ads and get them out there. But
Hmm.
I'm really terrible. I do have a newsletter, and I used to be really great. And I have a fairly large following. I think it's about 1,500, so it's not huge, but it's okay. But I have my newsletter, and I haven't put anything out in a while because I haven't had a book come out. But I'm
Yeah.
excited to start doing that again. I should just, I need to get back to doing that. I like to highlight other people's books if I don't have something coming
Yeah.
out, just to keep people in the know. And I was thinking
Yes.
about that this morning. I need to get back on the marketing train. So I apologize, but
No, that's good to
marketing
know.
is do it better than me. That's my
Well,
advice.
Well, we're getting close to running out of time, and I want to get two more questions in. So, first, tell me, do you have any advice for any aspiring authors out there?
Yes, right, 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 right. And don't be afraid. I mean, the only way, well, a couple of things that I've gotten really good advice. Geraldine Dawson told me early on, if you don't treat your writing like a business, nobody else will. So I quit saying I'm going to write and started saying I'm going to work. And as soon as you say, your friends would call and say, oh, I'm writing, and they'd keep talking. But if they call and you say, oh, I'm working, then they'll say, call me back. And that
Right.
is some of the best advice. And secondly, you just got to write. And even if you only have an hour at lunch, you can get words down, as you know.
Yep.
And then the other thing is, how bad do you want it?
Yeah.
And what do you want? If you want, how bad you make sacrifices. When my first husband was really sick, I would get up at 4:30 in the morning and write until 6 because he got up at 6, and then I knew the rest of the day I had to take care of him. And then that was just it kept me sane to get up and write, but that was my sacrifice. I get up at 4:30 in the morning because that was the only time I had to myself, and I
Hmm.
chose to use it to write. And I think that's the other thing too. And you have to think about, what do you want? How bad do you want it?
Yeah, I agree. And then, secondly, tell us really quick where we can find you and your books.
You can find me at maryjwilson.com. That's my website. And my books right now are on Amazon, but I'm by the end of this week, it's on my calendar to-do list that I will have them in all the other stores as well, e-stores. So
Awesome. Well, we look forward to that, and I look forward to that too. Thank you so much, Mary, for joining me today on Miles Beyond the Page. I really appreciate it.
thank you. It was fun.
Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, and share your favorite part of the conversation. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. You can also catch Miles Beyond the Page on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and iHeartRadio. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep writing, and I'll see you Miles Beyond the Page. Thanks for joining me on Miles Beyond the Page. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. If you're an author and want to be a guest, visit michellemiles.net/podcast to apply. Keep writing, keep dreaming, and I'll see you next time.